Hello, tech friends, and thank you for tuning into Emerging Technologies in Business, where we take a deep dive into different technologies that are impacting businesses today and in the very near future. I'm your host, Brock Riney, and this podcast is brought to you by ConcannonXR. Let's talk tech. Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode, and today we've got something pretty different. Actually, Matthew Carrier is here from ConcannonXR to help us celebrate our 50th episode. It's been a fantastic ride from the very beginning to where we are today, and we're going to change it up a little bit. So Matthew is actually going to interview me today, and we're going to go through kind of what happened, where we're going, what we learned, and what's going to happen here in 2023. So Matthew, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for grilling me today, good sir. How are you?
Yes. Great. Thank you. Brock, first, before we begin, congratulations on 50 episodes. There's a common saying among the podcast crowds that there's graveyard full of 4-episode podcasts. Right. Everyone thinks, hey, I'm going to start a podcast because everyone else is doing it. And then they get into 4 episodes and like, this is much harder than I thought. And so congratulations for 50. That's huge. So thank you for all your hard work. I know the time you spend trying to find the right people to bring on that's going to help add value to the episode. So I know that you do a lot of work. So I appreciate all the work that you do.
Really appreciate it. And whether anybody realizes it or not, Matthew is a lot of the behind the scenes magic that happens on this show. This semi-pretty face only does so much. And then when you hand it over to someone who has to then edit and broadcast said show, there's a lot of things that go unsaid. So Matthew, congratulations right back to you. Lots of hard work that were done in 2022 to get us to this point. But we're moving forward. So where do you want to start?
Let's do it. Yeah. Well, 2023 is going to be very exciting. I know that you already have some pretty special guests that you're bringing on, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to exposing this to more people, and I think we have some great opportunities for that. So let's get started, shall we? Intro.
Let's do it.
Or do we already have the intro? We already have the intro. Okay.
We did it.
Okay. So, Brock, from when you first started to where you are now, what do you feel like you maybe wish you knew when you first started interviewing people?
Okay. Good question. And the first thing that I would say is ask a good question. I definitely learned that the hard way to begin with. I had never been an interviewer before. I'd always been the interviewee. And when you're the interviewee, it's a little bit easier, actually. It's the lesser of the two jobs. You're just being reactive. When you're the interviewer, you have to do a lot more research. You have to know those nuances. And building those leading questions was definitely something that I learned in 2022. I will definitely refer to Sean Evans from Hot Ones a little bit there, that there might have been some days that I watched every single episode trying to become better, but I think one of the things that he does really well is that he gives a really good intro into a question. So it's not just a, Matthew, why did you keep your hair in that shape? It's a, hey, Matthew, I understand that the sideburns in a culture like yours is really important. Why did you decide to go down that path? It's okay to give a little bit of functional information at the beginning and then ask your question afterwards where you have a little bit more impactful answers. You tend to get people to open up more. And I guess when I first started, I was very just cut and dry. Like, hey, it's very nice to meet you. What is your company called? Good. That's good. And you learn from there, right? You get a little bit more relaxed. You feel more comfortable in your skin. But preparation and asking those leading questions, I would say, was probably the biggest thing that I learned over the course of the year.
Tell us about your first episode. What was that like, that experience?
It was rough. Lighting was a concern. You don't realize how important that is. And I went to film and radio television school in college, so I've got history in this. But it had been 10 years since I had utilized that knowledge, right? So I forgot most of the things that I had learned previously. So you have to relearn them a lot of the times. There's a lot of mechanical failures. There was a lot of lighting issues, audio issues, and you just become better and better as you do things. You run into tables to learn not to run into them the second or third time after your knees have gotten bruised up. But definitely one of the best things I think you ever said to me, right, was, hey, just letting you know, the first 20 are not going to be good. You just got to just keep recording, keep getting better, keep learning from the mistakes that you make. And that would be the advice that I would give to anybody that's starting their own video podcast or podcast in general, is record content and go back, listen to it, learn from your mistakes, learn what you didn't do well, and just perpetually put one foot in front of the other, and you'll be surprised how far you get in a given year if you just stick with it.
Absolutely. Consistency over anything else sets you apart from everyone else. So absolutely. 100%. Yeah. And that's I love it. And I'll share a personal story. When I started my podcast before, maybe 5 years ago, I started a podcast, and I got through maybe 12 episodes, and I listened back, and I'm like, they were horrible. And I actually cheated. So in order to make sure that wasn't forever in the air, like in the podcast world, what I did is I actually edited highlights of each of the episodes, and I created like one looking back episode of like that year, and then I deleted them all off the internet because I'm like, I don't want anybody to hear.
That was good.
Same thing, because you are very, like, you tend to be very, here's my list of questions, and I'm going to, no matter what you say, I'm going to just make sure I get to my next question, versus, oh, you went in this direction, I'm going to go on that journey with you, and let's see if we can dive in a little bit deeper in there. So,
and I would say awesome. I did the same thing. I would, originally when I first started, right, I would have my list of questions that were ready to go, and regardless of what you said, I was going to go to that next question. And then the longer that things went on, it became just kind of a move things around mentality. I still had a generalized basis of what I wanted to ask for, but being able to ask a responsive question based on something that you said really gets the end person to go a little bit deeper. And I know that's a message that we've been working on for the last year, really, just go one level deeper. Because one level deeper is really where you get the antithesis of where they're at and who they are. And that's the message that resonates with the end audience more than the, tell me what your favorite color is, Matthew. Blue? Cool. Where do you like to go? Like, those things get boring. You've got to ask those secondary questions. Oh, you like blue. Well, why do you like blue? Is it because you're colorblind and you only see certain colors? Or does it remind you of something from your past? What is that? That's a deeper question. I've learned to get better at that as time has gone on.
So one of my favorite things is, as we start the intro, you finish it saying, let's talk tech.
Yep. Let's talk tech. Yep.
So let's talk tech. Are you ready?
Let's do it. Yeah.
You done, I guess this is the 50th episode. So between the AI episodes and all the other things, what was the coolest piece of technology that you heard while interviewing somebody?
That's really tough. It's a really good question. And that was one of my favorite things, by the way. That was my job in 2022, was to get people to say, that's a really good question, or that's a tough question. And that was a good question. So that was a really tough one. I would say if you're talking in the realm of VR, Vario is, in my opinion, so far ahead of everybody else as far as recreating what a naturalized scenario would look like that you wouldn't be able to differentiate from real life. I don't think that there's anybody close, and they do amazing stuff, but the average consumer is not going to be able to see those things. I would think the coolest, most unique thing that I found was probably from Tilt 5. They're the ones that made a retro-reflective game board. And my older brother was a big fan of Dungeons and Dragons as a kid, and anything that my brother liked, I hated, right? It was just oil and water between us entire lives. He's 5 years older than me, so anything that he thought was cool, I absolutely hated. So I had no interest in Dungeons and Dragons, and really until I met Jerry, who's with Tilt 5. So the whole retro-reflective game board, the idea is that it takes away that eye pain that you have when you're putting on VR goggles, because it reflects the image back directly into your eyes. And I just thought that was really cool. So what that does is the ability to take any of these gaming boards that you would normally have playing with your friends and making them into a holographic board, like a VR style gaming board. But you could play that game with anybody in the world as long as you have the board and you have the glasses, you can play with each other. And to me, the idea of utilizing those things reminds me of when I was a kid. I was fortunate, right? I grew up with 9 other boys who were the same age, so it was kind of the Sandlot. We always got into trouble all the time, but it was sports from sun up to sundown or some sort of game. And with all of us getting spread across the world and country over the last 20 years, it would be a really cool thing to sit down and play a board game together, as stupid as that is, but simplicity with what you find favor in your past. Those are the things that really pull your heartstrings long term. So to me, that was probably the most impactful VR-wise. I don't know how you beat Vario. And then maybe one more to throw in as a consolation prize would be the LCD boards that they're making in Hollywood right now. So a lot of the different Hollywood producing companies or Hollywood studios, they're no longer building these full and elaborate sets that might take thousands or millions of dollars to make. What they're doing is they're having a flat out LCD screen that's made of millions and millions of pixels that can also show depth when they're moving the camera. So you're just having the actors in front of it. But instead of building this $1 million or $50,000 set that you have behind you that's going to be used one time and then go to inside studio warehouse, you're able to easily manipulate these screens as you go. And that's where you're getting things like Avatar, Way of the Water. They're utilizing these new functionalized cameras, but they're also doing them with these LCD back screens. And being a film nerd, I mean, that's cool to me. So that would be a couple of things I would jump into. I know that was a long-winded question.
No, that's great. No, that's great. One of the things that I missed was, what does Vario do? I think you mentioned them being an innovative company, but what exactly do they do?
Utilizes, they do something that's called the Vario Reality Cloud. And that's the ability to stream these things into the headset at the fastest pace that we've ever seen. There's zero latency, and their hardware is required to run that specific platform. So you do have to utilize their headset to run their platform, but it's the most streamlined cloud virtual reality platform that's in the market. No one is close.
Why is that important? Why is having that streamlined cloud so important?
Well, latency in anything in that aspect in VR will cause glitchiness, and it will take you out of the full impactful reality of what the scenario is going to look like. So you want things to look crystal clear, as if you're putting on the headset and I'm sitting in the exact same position I am right now with you still on the screen. By having that ability of data transfer that's not going to be impacted, there's no pixelation that happens, there's no jitter, and those types of things in a VR reality are what's going to make you feel as if this is truly immersive versus being just a game that you're playing. They're at that next level where I can see this partnered with a full haptic bodysuit and a unilateral running transition board that are already out. Both of those things are already in existence. We've seen haptic gloves, haptic chest suits. They've already got full bodysuits that are being manipulated now. That's when... What does that turn to, Matthew? Honestly, realistically, like at some point, do you now go on vacation because you want to go to Maui, and instead of actually going on a plane trip to Maui, you drive to Matthew's VR salon, they strap this thing on your head, and they somehow feed you for the next 2 weeks while you're enjoying yourself in sunny Maui, but you're still in Detroit, Michigan, realistically. But everything sensually would actually feel as if you were in that environment at the time. I don't think we're that far away from that realistically.
Yeah.
3 to 5 years, maybe?
Yeah, there's a book called The Future is Faster Than You Think, and they discuss a lot of these. Right now, currently, we're working to develop faster ways to transport ourselves from one area to another, where eventually you're not going to actually even need to go anywhere. Autonomous driving may not even be as important because you're not actually going to be going anywhere. You're just putting on that VR suit or whatever and walking into your office.
And I think that's the cool thing. You could literally have a haptic suit on and you could feel a sunrise because the haptic suit would tell you to feel the sunrise. You would feel the sun slowly hitting your body from left to right. Those are things that are already programmable literally today. We're just not in mass adoption yet.
One of the concerns that a lot of people have, I also understand this concern, is virtual reality, as much as remote work has done, is isolate people. And so corporate office environments provide an opportunity for you to have, what do they call it, water cooler talks, and like be in an environment with other people. You're creating relationships in that regard. When you go remote and we have Zoom conversations, even in a virtual reality environment, I understand the fear of people becoming more and more isolated because they don't have to go anywhere. They don't have to have face-to-face communication. Do you feel that being a risk involved in VR?
Yeah, I mean, there's always the thought of it becoming more and more Orwellian, realistically, right? Our TVs are getting bigger, right? If you go back and you read some of the old books, they're the size of your wall, right? We're not that far away from it, honestly. Yeah. We will become more separated as a species. I really don't see any other way that that's going to happen, because the normal office buildings have become archaic. And just because something changes doesn't mean that it's bad. What you have to look at is, if things are changing, how do you adapt? How do you get better? How do you better utilize your resources? Water cooler talk doesn't have to go away, but it's very functional. Functionally, in a water cooler world, you learn a sense of collective failure, where you're able to learn. So I can meet Matthew at the water cooler and say, hey man, what did you figure out on that last problem? And because I learned from the 4 times that you couldn't pass, but you figured it out in the end, I institutionally got more intelligent just by hearing what you had to say. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that companies can't institute those types of things into their weekly, daily processes in order to still utilize that idea of collective failure together. But I do think that we're becoming more and more isolated as a species. And I think COVID really produced that at a higher level than could have ever been expected. You look at companies like WeWorks that were thriving and initially failed because there's so much real estate right now that's not being utilized in business buildings where they previously were. Those will eventually be taken over by something kind of like what I was mentioning. You want to go to Maui? Go in VR. That's your new place to go. Not necessarily going to be a lawyer's office in there any longer, or I don't know, anything that you want to mention. That's what's going to take into those. And that's how the world always is. New technology comes out. The world will always adapt at their level and their speed that they're able to. Really, our job in the world of being in the world of technology is to try to read those tea leaves to see which ones are going to work and which ones aren't. And not all of them do. It's a 15% yield rate, realistically, if you're talking about new talking tech that actually does come to fruition and make a difference. And in that world, I don't see any way that we get closer together. I think we all get further apart. It is a very Orwellian thing to talk through, though. But truly, I think that's how it's going to be. I think vacations will be when you see people more often than anything else. And it will become further and further that way. My more interesting thing that I would say is, what happens when we really go to that digital currency? Is that really when we really stop seeing each other? Because I think that's kind of where that ends up. And that's my conspiracy theory, or my thought process long term. Anyway.
We could absolutely go down the digital currency, cryptocurrency, but I want to. We could go down a rabbit hole. I want to kind of just stay a little bit more in one direction here. But so in regards to, obviously, emerging technologies in business, we are working to reveal best practices for businesses, what technologies are helping businesses grow, become more efficient. When you look at adoption rate within businesses, what was expected versus what is the reality is that there tends to be a slower adoption right now for businesses. Obviously, the ones that are capitalizing and are seeing the returns on it, but there's still a slower adoption. In regards to all the tech that you have seen, in what industries do you feel like technology could best benefit the business?
That's a good question. Right now, healthcare is by far the best one, and they're actually probably one of the most biggest adopters of VR technology, AR technology, and XR technology. But after talking with like David Pearlstone, a few other medical authors that we met throughout the year, the ability to have those types of scans be in a 3D imageable way that young nurses, young doctors, and practitioners can access in training and also in real life scenarios, that's really where the biggest benefit is in mankind, in my opinion. The ability to look at, say, your lungs if you had pneumonia, to be able to zoom in and see the 3D CAD image that they were able to take from the same medical processing unit that they utilize today, but it's how we're receiving the information versus a 2D image where doctors are trying to interpret it. Now they'll have the ability to turn those lungs, zoom into them, and see where they're infected with COVID or pneumonia and what pieces are being effective. As simple as that. A 2D image is only going to give you so much, and the rest of it you're having to diagnose by learned knowledge that you may not have when you're a younger generation. And having to replace that next level of doctors, whereas the doctors that we have today are starting to retire and the new ones are coming in, this technology has become the most important there because that's what attracts the higher level of talent. If you don't have these abilities to show these new technologies, they're going to go to a school that does have them. And then that school will then change into what type of medical field that they're going to go into, what type of internship they do, or residency at the time. And if we're not looking at protecting and making our health benefits the most important thing that we've ever had, then what are we doing? It's the thing that keeps us alive. It's probably more important than transportation or anything else that's out there. Transportation, manufacturing, yes, we have to make things, but we need to keep people alive. And with 8 billion people, there's more of them to worry about now. That would be what I would say. The ability to see the medical technology that we've already had access to create the image before, but we've never had the ability to replicate the image for a doctor or a practitioner to see in that style of view the way it really should be intended to see. It's by far where the most money and lucrative things are going to be in the XR business, at least for the next couple of years, in my opinion.
Cool. Okay. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, okay? You ready for this?
Sure.
The CES just finished, January 8th. Did you look at some of the new technologies that were released or announced in CES? And is there anything that you thought was absolutely just mind-blowing or something that you want to share with us from what you've seen?
It's going to be difficult. So I went through the list several times. So I have a list of them, and I'm this guy, just being fair. I'm the guy who's going to reach out to almost everybody who went to CES this year and just ask them what they think was the coolest thing. Now, I do have Sam from Organics coming back on the show. He's there in person this year. And I am going to ask kind of what he thought were going to be the best things that are going to be at CES. I did find two that I thought were cool. Let me pull them up real fast because you did put me on the spot. You should have told me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
What was the?
And while you're looking,
it's a multi-device VR AR experience that they're able to do. I thought that was neat. I didn't see them on last year's list, and they look like they're a startup. So their ability to say it again.
What was it called?
Lucid Web.
Okay.
So it's unique browser, but it's making VR and AR available on smartphones, desktops, and VR headsets. So sort of how we're doing our Service Assist XR application on multiple devices. They're doing the same thing with their application, but they're having it across AR, VR, and web, which I don't know how that works. And that's got to be a lot of work that you got to put into it to be able to make a 2D image work on the web, but also in an augmented reality scenario, but also in a truly immersive VR. So I don't know how that works, and I wanted to look into more of that. That was one of them that I wanted to reach out to for sure. That was new to me. I had never heard of anybody doing that. I don't know if you had or not. And then more, I didn't see anything specific for this, but I wanted to go through this year I'm really looking into what the advancements are into haptics, because I think that's so important. And I think we've only gotten a fourth of the way there, right? It's going to be like anything else, just like microchips when they first started, right? They started bigger, they only held so much, they slowly got smaller, more compact, more defined as they went along. And haptics are truly the sixth sense. You're going to have this in order to feel truly immersed in anything. What my really long-term hope is going to be at a CES next year when I'm there, just so you know, is that I want to be able to test out a full-on haptic bodysuit at some point. Between now and the end of next year, I want to feel what that feels like. And more than anything, I really think a racing thing would probably be the best way to feel that, right? Because as you're hugging a hard left turn, you're going to feel you're going to feel those things shake, and you feel the G's, and that's what I want to feel. The only other thing I could think of would be as if they did a haptic suit where you could feel what it would feel like to have like a rocket ship take off with you in it. I think that would be a really cool thing to do. So that's a couple of things I'm looking at.
Last year, I remember stumbling across, I do not believe it's any relation to the company Tesla, but there was a Tesla suit that was being sold to firefighters to do some VR training, and you could feel the heat from the flames in this VR environment to know, like, what are you actually walking into before you actually have to walk into a burning building, which they do. Absolutely. And so having some of those real life trainings for police officers, for firefighters, for anybody that has to put themselves in risk or in harm's way, having them go through the training of how is your heart going to respond to that? How is your mind going to respond to feeling that heat literally? And then having to be like, stay calm and continue doing my job. I think those things are going to be fascinating for our, like, first responding type of groups.
And if they should partner that company with OVR Technologies. This episode's not out yet, but it's coming out soon. And I got to interview Aaron, who's their CEO, and they do scent technologies for VR, and including they do a lot of it for first responders, right? So it's a little bar that goes underneath the Oculus, right? So it sits right down here, and it has scents that it can release while you're geolocated inside of your VR space. So if they're on a trackpad, like I was mentioning before, this is really where we're going. If they're on a multi-level trackpad, they can go any direction, or unidirectional. There it is. That's the word I was looking for. Unidirectional trackpad. They can run in any direction. And this program that OVR has connected would be able to help first responders like firefighters as they're getting closer to the designated area in the simulation that they're creating. The scent of fire or the scent of burning anything could get stronger as they walk forward because they're able to release them in such small amounts. It is the craziest thing. I'm telling you, haptics, smelling everything, or having what do you call them? I have to look up the word at this point. But olfactory. That's what they're called. Olfactory responders. That's what your nasal glands are, basically, that can tell what your scents are.
All I can think about is I want to use it and watch the Food Network channel. I just want to watch a cooking show and have the smells so I can smell what they're smelling and looking at. That's all I can think about.
Interesting enough, when I was interviewing Aaron, I didn't know this, right? So that's really possible, right? So there are apparently 13 base smells that make up all smells in the world. So it's just a matter of how you mix those together that would give you roast chicken or Brussels sprouts or whatever else. And isn't that bizarre that 13 smells make everything? It's crazy. Yeah. I would have never known.
But it's like perfume, right? Like there's only a certain amount of smells, and you just, it's about the...
I have no idea how that worked. That was crazy to me. It was cool to learn.
Well, Brock mentioned next time he's at CES next year, and one of the next year, and one of the things that we want to introduce to our audience, and we need your help, is to get Brock to CES, and that means subscribing to this YouTube channel. We have a competition. If we can get 1,000 subscribers, we are sending Brock to CES. to go look at all of the incredible new technologies, be firsthand, do some podcast episodes there, live, meet more people, and share all that with you. So if you want to send Brock to CES, subscribe to this YouTube channel right now. Send it to all of your friends. If they never watch one episode, we won't tell them, but subscribe to the YouTube channel and continue to learn about what's new technologies are happening in business. Pretty much, we're as soon as we learn about it, we interview them. And that's what's amazing about what Brock is doing with emerging technologies in business, is being able to bring in people directly and share directly from their mouth and not through some publicist. So I'm excited, Brock, for 2023. I am really, really excited for you to go to CES. We're going to do everything we can to make this podcast YouTube channel successful. So keep up the hard work. Thank you for sharing some of your insights. Before we go, let's say, what are you most excited about in 2023 for the podcast?
2023. I'm going to really delve into the world of Web3 here in the beginning of 2023. I think it's going to be insanely important, especially in the world of cryptocurrencies and eventually the world developing their own kind of universal digital currency, which will come into fruition in our lifetimes. We just don't know when that's going to be. Web3 is really going to push that. That's going to narrate the dictation of how those things are going to move forward. I want to hear from Sam about 2023 CES because I'm just a big nerd and I can't help myself. And really, I just want to see how the world of XR continues to progress in all these different technologies that we may not have found yet, that are always going to come to the forefront. Like 3D building this last year in 2022 really kind of took off. There are multiple companies now building 3D houses. So I want to see what the next version of that's going to be. What's just going to be the next thing that's going to change? I'm really looking forward to Apple VR. I think that's the game changer that everyone's waiting around for, is Apple VR and Apple AR. We may have an announcement about that here in January as a rumor. I'm not saying that's fact because I don't know. But as soon as they announce it, Apple typically is when the big lion's share of the general populace decides to jump in and become on board, and it's really going to change everything very quickly when that does happen. So I'm excited to see that. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff. I really think it's going to be great. More than anything else, I am excited for this podcast to get up to 1,000 followers. And you're right, Matthew. They should subscribe right now. If you haven't told your friends or family, you should do that right now. I bet they would be very happy if you shared that with your family, your friends, all your fantasy football leagues that you didn't win or did win. I hope you did well. You can talk it to any of your friends' groups. If your kids know other parents, tell them. I recommend leaving notes on sidewalks. Don't write your name on them. That way people don't know who you are and they don't think that you're creepy. But tell them to subscribe, and we would appreciate that too. Really, we're kind of shameless on which way that you bring people to the platform. Yeah. But I promise to make it fun. I promise to make it interesting. And I promise to just learn about new things and enjoy the ride along with each and every one of you. If there is something you want to see, shoot us an email, send me something on social media. We would love to hear back from you. You can find us pretty much anywhere on social media at ETIB Podcast. And, of course, you can message me on any of the videos on YouTube, and I'll always try to respond to you as well.
Perfect. What so many different places to go find people to subscribe.
True.
You know, and I shared with Brock, one of my grassroots strategies for my podcast is I would go to an Apple store and just go to all of their new phones and subscribe on their iTunes account on all the different phones. And I had so many subscribers that way. It was a lot of fun. So
you got 26 new every time a new iPhone came out.
Exactly. All right, Brock, thank you so much for taking the time. Again, congratulations on 50. Maybe we'll add some applause, some fake applause sounds, but congratulations. Looking forward to the new year, and thank you for taking the time to have this conversation with us.
Thanks, Matthew. Really appreciate it. For everybody watching, thanks for tuning in. It's been another episode of Emerging Technologies in Business. We're going to talk some more emerging tech next time. Bye, everybody.